Welcome to the Callahan Connection here, and here we are in the studio, and my guest today is Bob Rulli, Director of the Office of Community Economic Development. And we're going to start today. We're going to work our way backwards, not from when he started to last night, but we're going to work our way backwards from last night's great town council meeting. And then we're going to go back into the history a little bit and try to understand this right here, Bridgewater Vision to Reality. So why don't you open up with what happened last night at our town council?
I'm still trying to recover from that.
Well, it did go a little long, didn't it?
Yeah. So last night the town council did approve a zoning amendment that did a couple of things. It puts us in compliance with the MBTA communities legislation. It also includes something called a form-based code, which will allow for expedited development approval in the Central Business District R, which is basically everything east of Main Street to Campus Plaza and Broad Street, as well as Plymouth Street.
Okay, say it again. Because when people hear Central Business District, and I'm telling you, they think of that little circle downtown.
Right.
So explain to them what it entails.
The Central Business District is Central Square, but it also extends to the edge of Campus Plaza and
Spring Street.
And Spring Street, correct. So the way the MBTA legislation is written is that you're looking at a half-mile radius of where the asset is. So in this case, the platform at present is embedded on the university's campus.
Correct. Yeah.
Not easily accessible and not easy to develop within that half-mile radius from that location. So what we've proposed, and it's not part of what was ever approved last night, it's secondary, is relocating the platform back to the Spring Street lot. I mean, the original station was the Burger King.
Right.
We don't have stations anymore, we have platforms. So we're suggesting if we can move the platform back to the Spring Street lot, see development of Campus Plaza and some other parcels, that's supporting a concept called transit-oriented development.
Which is the MBTA, that's part of that law.
That's one of their goals, is to encourage people to take public transportation. We don't believe that that's entirely going to be train transportation. We've been in conversations with BAT and BSU in the senior center that there's a concept called microtransit, smaller buses that can navigate within a town's smaller streets that are easily accessible to the public, whether that's students, seniors, or just people coming.
Like a college campus has a jitney.
Exactly. So, but that's separate from what was approved last night. I mean, that's part of our ongoing strategy for what Vision to Reality is. But big step to make us be in compliance. It makes us eligible for a number of different funding sources that are not primarily dedicated to the downtown area. It could be for open space and conservation rights acquisition, parks. It could be used for road improvements, all things that we need to do. But the way that the position that the Healy administration has taken was that if you're not in compliance with the legislation, then you're not going to get any of this money. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding in terms of what the legislation means and what it's intended to do. I'm on record as saying, there's a lot of flaws in the legislation, but it's the law.
Yeah, but that's how things get developed in the legislature.
Absolutely.
Everybody, they debate these things.
Yep.
It's not going to come out perfect.
Right.
It's a bill that's been debated going back to the Baker administration.
Right. I mean, and you're correct. It passed the House unanimously. I think there was 2 or 3 dissenting votes in the Senate when it was originally passed. Yeah. The legislation requires towns to, at least within their zoning documents, have the ability to create X number of units. And that's based on the number of homes you have in town now. So in Bridgewater's case, the formula that they came up with is that on paper, you would need to create at least 1,401 units of housing, comma, you're not forced to build 1,401 units of housing.
Okay, I'm going to comment on that. Go ahead.
Period.
Yeah, because that came up again and again.
Yeah, I mean, there's an acknowledgement, and I've had this conversation with the lieutenant governor when she was at BSU months ago, that Bridgewater, as an example, does not have the infrastructure capacity to support right now 1,401 units of housing.
Correct.
They understand that. And again, is the legislation awkward in how it's written to say we want this, but we know you can't build this? Probably so, but again, so we've been able to do that with the zoning amendment that was approved last night. The form-based code is separate. I mean,
Don't go there yet. Okay, back to the MBTA community. So you created it's a zoning article.
correct.
It's not a plan we submitted.
No, it's a zoning ordinance.
And that's what the state is looking for.
Correct.
So, and residents were, coming back and saying the state's bashing us, they can't do this, they can't do this. But what wasn't mentioned last night was the housing shortage in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And the Boston Sunday Globe had an article on the front page about kids that are 25 to 40 leaving the state
Right.
every year. 20,000, 25,000 last year, and over the last 10 years, I don't know how many. And, so we're losing young talent.
Yep.
Bright young kids that may have gone to school here, and then they can find a job, they can't find a place to live in.
Right.
Okay?
So,
So to your point, the 1,401 units is just a mark in time, like okay, so we have, which is what the law is intended to do, is to say, okay, we have the potential in the 177 communities to make this development, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I heard that last night. I've heard it at other meetings. The state can't tell us what to do, but I don't expect the public to know this, but a municipality's right to zone, whatever that is, comes from the legislature. It's called enabling legislation, that you have the ability to zone. So for people to suggest the state can't be telling you what to do, actually they can. And so I like to say people don't know what they don't know, and I don't expect them to know it, but that's just a fact. Now, to your point, there is a housing crisis. I hear all the time, there's not a housing crisis. There is. I live in Rhode Island. There's a housing crisis there as well. And there's a lot of misinformation in terms of all this new housing is going to go to a certain type of person or a certain type of families. I'm not even going to give it justice to say what you hear, but
Thank you for not going there.
we have we have an emerging cybersecurity program, as an example, at Bridgewater State University.
Yep.
Right now, there's 20,000 jobs available in the cybersecurity field in Massachusetts. Starting salaries in that field are over $100,000. Wouldn't we want to keep the people that are emerging from that program in Bridgewater? I've said oftentimes that cyber program at Bridgewater and how that is growing and how it impacts everyone could be the biotech, biomed for both Bridgewater and the region. But we don't have...
You could have the education, and you might get a company to actually locate here? Is that what you're speaking to?
So I know the university's looking at it. We've suggested there's the ability to have off-campus some kind of joint workspace with tech companies that are in that cyber space, but you have professors that have intellectual capital coming out. You have businesses that might emerge from there that want to be in proximity to the cyber range. So all of that can happen, but where would they live? We don't have the housing available, and again, as I said, starting salary is over $100,000 a year. Those are good paying jobs, but we don't have that housing product in Bridgewater. I hear from the university all the time.
Certainly in the central business district, there's nothing.
Right, and I hear from the university often that it's difficult for them to attract younger professors because they can't live close to campus.
Yeah.
So it's an education process. I understand that, but when you're challenged that, no, there isn't a crisis, well, call it something other than a crisis. There's a housing shortage then.
Call it a shortage.
But so, and the idea that, and it's been said often that right now in the economic environment we're in now, nobody's going to just put a restaurant in the center of a town where nobody lives.
Correct.
It's not going to happen. retail is almost impossible to finance right now. The only way you get those amenities of commercial space, retail space, professional office, restaurants, is you have to have housing around it to surround it. Those are called mixed use projects. Those projects are getting financed based on the strength of the housing, not the other pieces. And I mean, that's just a reality in the marketplace right now. It's difficult to develop in this economy right now.
Well, you talk to developers now, 9 out of 10, they're looking for residential projects. They want a residential project, rehab of something, or build from the ground up. And retail is really, and I have space for lease. There's not a lot of retail.
Right.
Once you get done with the nail salon and the pizza place, who else you got?
Right.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, I have, since I started last January, I have more people that tell me, it's really too bad we don't have any good restaurants here. I have to go to Easton to eat.
Yeah.
Well, there's a reason you don't have the restaurants, is you don't have the people down. You need feet on the sidewalk, and we just don't have that. And so, what we've looked at as part of Vision to Reality is, where can we develop where there's existing infrastructure, that we don't have to go out and take some more agricultural land or cut down trees.
Yeah, good point.
And yeah, we refer to these as underutilized parcels. So Campus Plaza is 13 acres. There's a lot you can do.
Tell me when Campus Plaza was built. 70s?
Well, probably the late 60s. I came here as a student in 1977, and it was here.
Oh, so you're a veteran.
Yeah. I left, but I mean, the configuration was exactly the same, with the exception of the 99 was added. There was a standalone McDonald's. I think, there was a Zayres,
Zayres was up with Burlington.
It's been cleaned up, but I mean, it's still. And this is a trend that I think you're going to start to see throughout the Northeast right now. It's something that I did in Rhode Island when I was there, is that repurposing these 1950s, 1960s shopping centers. They're one story, loads of parking in the front, and how can you reuse those? So you can have smaller commercial businesses or retail or hospitality, housing above them, amenities. You're going to have better stormwater control. You're going to reduce contamination. I mean, there's a lot of pluses that come. Plus, you're going to increase tax revenue tenfold. And so, I mean, but change is hard for people to grasp. I totally understand that.
Well, they can drive to Hanover, because Hanover did it. They took the same thing, a dilapidated mall with not a lot of foot traffic or people, bodies, and they're repurposing that mall.
I mean, we use Mashpee Commons as an example, that Campus Plaza could be a smaller version of that, but that's what Mashpee Commons started as.
Yeah, like the Derby Place and Legacy Place and all that place. Yeah. Like you go in, you kind of walk around.
It's a destination.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, there's a lot for people to get their arms around. But I come back to, I was brought here after the town had adopted its most recent comprehensive master plan.
Yes.
Which was a really well done document.
I served on that.
And it identified policies, objectives, and goals.
Yeah.
The first meeting that I did in February of 2023 with the town council said, here, cut and paste. These are what...
You read it, so you took it and read the document.
This is what you had in your plan.
Yeah, good.
I'm going to give you a roadmap to implement these, because you've had several of these and haven't done anything.
Correct.
And all Vision and Reality is, and the vision part comes from the first word in the comprehensive master plan, talks about the community's vision.
Yeah.
So we are now the reality of what that vision is.
Good,
but
good.
Housing was addressed, transportation and pedestrian improvements, all of the elements that are on the board behind me are all from the comprehensive master plan. That's all Vision and Reality is we're implementing that. Now, people may not have had an idea of what it was going to look like, but this is what it looks like. I mean, we're not trying to make Bridgewater into a city. We're very strong about preserving Central Square, but seeing some investment. I mean, there's clearly buildings that need some reinvestment by those property owners. The mix of businesses could be better, but The rest of the area, I mean, we've got several sites that, I hear about. The Friendly's assemblage, as an example, have been that way for 10 years or more.
Yeah.
There's an empty lot on the corner of Hale and Plymouth Street that the university owns. That's where they're looking potentially to do a tech building. We've got the Perkins Foundry project has been approved. That's going to be a real catalyst for things to
And
start.
how many, to speak to that a bit, how many units would that be?
I think there's 148 units in total. 2 buildings close to Broad Street that would have ground.
I think they tore down a house, and is that old auto parts place part of that?
No, that's not. It's not. So
Okay.
there'll be 2 commercial buildings in the front with ground floor commercial or retail or restaurant.
Yeah.
Some apartments, 2 stories of apartments above, and then a building in the rear with 148 units, I believe, in
Great.
total.
Yeah.
That's set back from the road. So I mean, it's really a well-designed project. And when I first got here, I was not a fan of what they had presented to the planning board. Working with the developer, we were able to get them to redesign it, and I think
Great.
it's something that's going to be very complementary to some of the other initiatives
Attractive.
that we
It's
have.
going to be attractive.
Absolutely.
And certainly a great location.
Yeah.
And
So-
to take down a foundry and repurpose that for, attractive apartments sounds like a pretty good idea.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think people realize that foundries aren't a friend of the environment.
Well, they took one down in Easton, and they've been cleaning it up for a few years, and they're putting $900,000 homes, but on smaller lots.
Yeah.
So they're kind of grouping the thing, kind of a village type setting. Okay, so let's go back a minute. So we have the MBTA community zoning part, and then talk a little bit more about the
Form-based code.
form-based code. Kind of explain that to the crowd.
So form-based code, I mean, basically, it's looking at what your existing zoning is and what does the community want to see. So by right now, a developer can come in and do a 4-story building in this area, but we may not allow for mixed use. I mean, so it might say it has to either be all residential or all commercial. Mixed use is the way that we really want to promote things now. And maybe some relief on parking requirements. I hear all the time that there's parking is an issue. We have a parking management problem. We don't have a parking problem. There's plenty of parking spaces. We just need a better parking strategy and a better parking management.
Parking design, that whole thing is crazy.
And so the form-based code is basically, here's a checklist. It's 13 pages long. You check all of these boxes and we'll get you through the approval process faster. You're not going to ping pong back and forth between the planning board and the zoning board. The planning board will have an opportunity to look at the application, but ultimately staff will say you're in compliance with the checklist and you can move forward. That is very attractive to the development community because it's predictable. It's predictable for the community in terms of we're saying these are the type of buildings we want, these are the type of materials we want, these are the setbacks that we want. And if we can get somebody through that approval process faster, that's money that can be reinvested in the project. I use Perkins as an example that process started over 2.5 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And in that 2.5 years, interest rates have probably moved 5 or 6 points.
Yeah.
On a $50 million project, that's $1 million more a year in debt service.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of developers that can absorb that kind of hit.
It's pretty serious. If you talk to guys that are doing even small retail developments, I had a customer and talking to him about a corner up the street, and he had to bail out of a project because of the interest rate had changed, and he couldn't finance it. He couldn't put it together.
Right.
And it was a coffee shop. It was a Starbucks.
And again, I think that's one of the points I want to make is that in real estate we talk about a bankable tenant. It used to be if you were a big retailer and you were going to a project, bank's like, okay, they're going to be here for a while. Well, Christmas tree shop, bankrupt.
Yeah.
Bed Bath & Beyond, bankrupt. Those used to be bankable tenants.
Right.
The local artist that wants to open an art gallery, that's not a bankable tenant.
Right.
And so that means there's more risk, right? And
Yeah.
more risk means
and those
higher
are the
interest
people
rates.
you're going to come knocking on the door. It's going to be these small mom and pop places, and you can't build 4 or 5 stories with mom and pop
No, but I mean, given the right situation, allowing a developer to do residential can subsidize letting those businesses come in,
Right.
because you're financing it based on the strength of the housing piece, not the retail piece.
Which would be a good thing if you thought about Bridgewater being active. Now maybe you get small businesses coming back into the town.
And that's what we want to do. I mean, I think that, again, that's why we use like the Mashpee Commons as an example. You don't have a lot of chain restaurants, a lot of chain stores there.
That's right.
They're regional or they're local, and that's what you want to create that sense of community. There's an incredible amount of money that leaks out of Bridgewater every day because people are either eating in Easton, they're shopping someplace else.
Yeah.
Bridgewater has one of the highest area median incomes in the region, and we're not capitalizing on that. We're letting that money bleed out.
They can go, listen, if you want to go to a restaurant, look at Middleborough, which is, talk about income. Bridgewater, I'm sure, far surpasses Middleborough. And there's restaurants all over Middleborough, And you go up the street to East Bridgewater, to the Fiesta up there, you can't get into the place, packed. We don't have a lot of choices.
No.
But I don't think we have, it's really not designed, and I don't think we have, like you say, the population in the right place.
Right.
They might be out on the far end of the east side of Bridgewater or the west end of Bridgewater.
And it's easier for them. I mean, there's no reason for them to come downtown, so they're going to go in the opposite direction.
Right.
I mean, I hear it all the time that, well, all this new development is going to cause traffic issues. Well, there are already traffic issues. I mean, if anything, it gives us the money to try to mitigate that. But Old Colony Planning Council last fall completed a corridor study on Route 18 from East Bridgewater to the Rotary in Middleborough. Every intersection in Bridgewater was an F. So, I mean, it's hard to say we can't do better. That traffic is all driving through Bridgewater. It's not stopping
It's
in
heading
Bridgewater.
right south.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, as part of vision and reality, I mean, we've identified that we need to do traffic and pedestrian improvements. I just put out an RFQ at the end of last week for preliminary design and engineering to look at that area around Central Square where all those roads converge. So, when we talked about grant money last night, what we're missing, that's some of that money can go to those types of projects. But to say that we don't want to grow because we have a traffic issue, well, let's correct the traffic issue.
Yeah,
And
we have the traffic, 104 traveling east and west is a traffic issue. Well, 18, you're right, 18 as well.
So, I mean, again, and there's a lot in vision reality for people to comprehend and get their head around. I understand that. I completely acknowledge that, but we can't maintain the status quo.
Right.
So people don't like change. Well, doing nothing is a change too. And as I mentioned last night, there are infrastructure costs that are becoming due in by fiscal year 30, almost 116 million for improvements for water and wastewater, and that has, assuming we don't do anything in terms of new development. So, I mean, how those get paid, you need to find other sources of revenue. Grants aren't going to pay for all that. We need tax revenue. And we're hoping that doing smart development, smart growth in these underutilized properties is a chance to do that. If we're able to see a joint venture, public-private partnership on the corner of Hale and Plymouth Street, we get zero in taxes money on that now.
It's a concrete platform.
If
right.
we're able to move the platform back to the Spring Street lot and the MBTA can say we want to ground lease a portion of this, well, that's another parcel we're getting zero in tax revenue that we have the potential to get some significant revenue.
That street's underdeveloped. That whole street with the old buildings down
Right.
there.
I mean, in Hale Street, I mean, there's underutilized. So,
Yeah.
and what we're looking at is areas where we already have something,
Yeah.
but we could do something much better than what's there now.
Spring Street could be improved. Right out here, as making it part of that central business district.
Right.
Make the street lights, sidewalks.
I think people, there's a perception issue that, and I use the analogy all the time, downtowns are like smiles, and this one needs some dental work. Because, I mean, you can walk from my office at the Academy building to Campus Plaza, back to BSU's campus, back to my office in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like people want to do that. I mean, you have this big void on Broad Street of either abandoned buildings or vacant space, and then it doesn't. I mean, you could physically walk from Campus Plaza to the university, but it doesn't feel like it's a walkable. And those are amenities that are easy to do. And the campus the school has invested tons of money in their campus. I mean, it's a very inviting spot. And then you're back to Town Hall.
Yeah.
And it's not, but people don't think about it.
Right. Right. We don't think about it enough. We drive right through it.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm guilty of it too. You know, we go out to eat and we leave. You know, it's a change of perception, change of thought, and to your point, it is progress because change is inevitable.
Well, change happens whether you like it or not.
There you go.
My feeling has always been I'd rather be proactive than reactive.
Ahead of the game, right? Don't look at it and look back and say, "Hey, we should have done."
Right.
You know, and I think we've done that a lot in our town. Look back, you know. So we're gonna kind of wrap up here. Give me your summary and what's the next step? We had a good meeting last night. What do you see coming at you?
I mean, well, the ordinance has to be reviewed by the Attorney General's office. It has had a preliminary review. We made some revisions, so we feel comfortable with what they're getting. It then needs to be signed off by the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. We anticipate that will happen. We will start to apply for some grants because we know we're submitting the ordinance. And it's talking with the development community. The Perkins Foundry site, as I said, is approved. They've got some environmental cleanup that they have to complete, but they've gotten their approval from DEP. I think that there should be some activity on the Friendlies assemblage in the near future. There's a contract on another piece of property on Main Street that will be potentially condos for sale, which would be good. But it's really getting the development community engaged with that Bridgewater is open for business, we're developer friendly, you know, continuing to work with the university to flush out this tech building that potentially could go off campus.
Cybersecurity you talked about.
Cybersecurity, right. And, you know, again, continuing to educate the public because we don't want the public to have misinformation. And I think there's a lot of that out there now.
How do they find you? How does the public find you? Google, you go on town planning, right?
Yeah, just go to the town's website. I mean, we've done a number of public meetings.
It's a planning department, another planning department.
Community and economic development, yep.
Okay, good.
And
good.
I mean, we'll go talk to groups big or small. You know, we probably did at least 20 meetings leading up to, you know, last night we did a big community workshop in September. We had over 200 people in attendance. We'll probably do something in the fall again.
Good.
But encourage people to, rather than walk around with misinformation or I think I heard something, I mean, ask us. I mean,
you did a great presentation with Metro South Chamber of Commerce at the old Scott Links Clubhouse. That's how I first heard about the Vision to Reality.
But if people Google Vision to Reality, it'll take you to our website. And we have a YouTube channel on there. I've written a number of white papers on issues that people have, whether that's housing, change, economic development, infrastructure. It's all there. We purposely made it short and readable, but ask questions.
Yeah, good. We're going to wrap up here. My guest today is Bob Rulli, Director of the Office of Community and Economic Development in the town of Bridgewater. And his special project is right here. Right here. We have lots of brochures. These are free to give out.
Yeah.
And he's full of information. And call him if you have questions or go down and see him. You take visitors?
We do. Take walk-ins.
Thank you so much for being
Bill,
here
thank
today.
You. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we learned a lot here today. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.